sent to Parks and Rec on November 18th. And then we'll talk a little bit about fees and start to have that conversation. So before we start, I'm going to have everybody go around and introduce themselves so we know who's here. Angelique, do you want to start?
Angelique Wilson, I'm the recreation supervisor overseeing sports and aquatics.
Dale Steele, Deputy Director for Parks and Recreation.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kim Castro. I'm the recreation manager. I'm Kim Orlando. I'm the management analyst for Parks and Rec. I'm Rob. I'm from SantaClaraCA.
Ray Conley, Lions football, Santa Clara.
Mike Walkie, Santa Clara Pal.
Santa Clara resident.
Peter Curtis, Santa Clara resident.
Anthony Pasquale, former pro West Side League, coach at Santa Community Park.
Chase Lane, Santa Clara Soccer League.
Marlon Cruz, Recreation Coordinator.
I'm out of the CRC.
And then I believe we have a few people on the line. It looks like Maureen Riley, Maureen Chu, I'm sorry. Pamela Espinoza from the Santa Clara Swim Club, Kevin Zacher, and Steve Robertson. Is there anybody else I'm missing? No? Okay. Okay, so when you came in, and hopefully you received them last night, I sent you a couple of documents. One was the draft fund guidelines for the Wade Brummal, which also had an attachment for the checkbox, which is for the grants. If you remember last time we talked about separating out the scholarship process from the grant process, the work checklist would only apply if there was excess money. So we'll go through this. And then I also sent you the scope of maintenance work that is being done at the fields that staff performs at the various fields. And then I also provided a handout. Some of you, I could not remember if everybody had been here when we did the first meeting. The consultant gave an overview of the cost recovery policy. I thought that would be helpful for you. And when we get to the point when we start talking about fees. So what I wanted to start with is finish off the Wade Brummal, because I think that's the easiest thing that we can accomplish today. Just one second, I got to get my notes here.
I'm going to share that.
Yeah, go ahead and play that. So if you'll remember the last time we talked about the group's consensus was that there should be a priority on scholarships as the first priorities and grants available only if there was a balance at the end of the year. And that we wanted to clarify eligibility for scholarships and grants. We wanted to clarify the timeline for the process of when to submit payments to the fund and when requests could be made. We wanted to increase the language for the approval limits, with the director approval being raised to 2,500 and the recommendation for anything above 2,500 to go to PRC at above 2,500. And then providing a process and an online form to request a grant if excess funding is available. So again, here, the first part of it was really the sort of an overview of what the purpose of, making it clear that it's a scholarship program established for the primary purpose to provide financial assistance to qualified Santa Clara youth who wish to play and organize youth sports programs but lack the financial means to do so. And nonprofit youth sports organization that allows non-resident participants and uses City of Santa Clara facilities to provide their programs are required to contribute to the scholarship fund. Each year or before issuance of a field permit, a team must submit a full team roster which indicates whether participants are qualifying City of Santa Clara residents or non-residents. This roster must be accompanied by a proof of residency for each participant. For each non-resident youth participant, the organization will be required to contribute $25 to support the Wade Brummal Scholarship Fund. Is that consistent with what everybody's recollection is? Yes, okay. Okay, so in terms of program definitions, qualifying youth resident, a resident is any player athlete 18 years and under who resides within the City of Santa Clara or who is enrolled in the City of Santa Clara Unified School District or other private school located in the City of Santa Clara. A non-resident youth is an any player 18 years and under who does not reside within the geographic boundaries of the City of Santa Clara or the boundaries of the Santa Clara Unified School District. A nonprofit is a registered 501c3 nonprofit organization entity operating exclusively for the welfare and development of a youth sport. And proof of residency, it'll be the responsibility of the leagues to verify residency. These will disclose non-residents on their rosters submitted to the Parks and Rec Department. The roster will include the following information: name, address, zip code, and school attending for each participant. Any questions or edits in that section? Great, we're 2 for 2. Okay, collection of non-resident fees, the amount of fee each nonprofit youth sports organization using a Santa Clara Parks and Rec sports facility will pay a fee of $25 per non-resident participant per season. The total fee shall be made payable to the city of Santa Clara, Wade Brummal, Youth Sports Fellowship Fund, care of Parks and Recreation Department, 1500 Warburton Avenue, Santa Clara, 95050. Anything on that?
Yeah, was it per season or per year?
Most of the larger leagues do it on a league or the whole entire year, but like with your group, just going into smaller seasons, you've always submitted it by season. So after flag football, after the regular football season with your cheer, you've done it like that. But like Pal, you guys have submitted in your full season. Linda, you haven't done the full season, and the others.
I have 4 programs that run in one season. So each time this kid signs up, each time the family signs up as a non-resident, they pay the $25? Or is it that once they come for like the first one, spring football, they pay the $25? It's good for the year?
That we have been doing in the past, yes.
And we're proposing per season now.
Per season, yes.
The intent is per year.
So yeah, so if we've got the wrong language, that's why we want to go through this. If we got the wrong language, we want to know. And we're happy to change it. We just need to be clear. This was how we interpreted it. If it's per season, some groups pay it differently. And so if it needs to be per season, per year as appropriate, we can do it that way.
It's not, excuse me, but it's not so much how much I pay per year. It's how much the kid or the family pays as a non-resident. I have spring, flag, conditioning camp, and tackle. So we're a year-round program. Kid comes out and signs up for spring. He usually stays the whole year. Do I charge him 4 different times? Do I charge him 1 time as a non-resident, as long as he's consistent in my program for that year? This thing says per season. I have 4 seasons.
So I think there's a difference between a season and a program, right? So it seems to me that the intent of the way Brummal, and you all know better than I was because I wasn't here. The intent was every time a program came and you're serving a non-resident, you would charge the fee. That would go into the fee. So in your case, it does sound like it's different programs, right? For the season. So you would pay every time they entered into the conditioning, then I forgot how you said, conditioning, the football season, and then.
My program, yeah.
Because they're different programs, right?
Well,
So
from what I've always understood, once a kid pays in January, he's good till the following January, once a year. This thing is implying that I have an out of resident, he pays for every activity. So a lot of programs are not year round.
So how has it been applied to the other groups? So for example, Little League, you have a fall season and you have a spring season. How has it been applied there? Then it sounds like it's per year.
Like they asked us,
Is-
if we have your rosters,
How about
when we pay whenever we. Right, so normally we'll ask for rosters in April. Yeah. And then I get them April, May-ish, I send out the invoice in May and payments come in that June timeframe. You haven't used our field cruiser, so you have been out of that. Okay.
Like that part doesn't need to be defined, because there's not only the, way of reading it, like there's the, we pay the fees, which we try, it sounds like Lions, and we also charge extra, right, for those, right? But then, we're saying that's on a calendar basis. What about on the receiving part of it? Is that also on a calendar basis or by season?
We have been doing it on account. So we only have been you get all of your funds at the end of our fiscal year, so June 30th.
So we would be able to, we would just basically include the fall into that like yearly application section.
Okay, so it sounds like the consensus of the group is that it should be yearly. Is that what I'm hearing?
What was that you said?
The consensus should be yearly rather
Yearly.
than season.
Okay.
We have very few groups, for example, North Valley Baptist that just uses us for fall. So in December, I will collect their fees because I'm not gonna wait until April. Because
So for PAL softball, you collect for our regular season and our fall season.
but for your winter, spring and the fall.
So you collect twice from us. And in a lot of cases, it's the same kid, like Craig has.
Well, the last couple of years, we've done one large roster for you guys.
So
Do you need a suggestion that it should be on a yearly basis? That I'm collecting this $25 from non-residents?
it seems like in listening to you, it seems like the practice has been a little bit different based on each group. Because you're saying you're collecting on both fall and spring, which to me makes the most sense because it may not be the same kids, right? Or the same kid may be doing a different league. In your instance, it sounds like, or in the little leagues, it sounds like it's been an annual. And so I do think there's an issue here. We need to be clear on what we're going to be doing and doing consistently.
Okay, so I'll give you a, for instance, I have a kid coming out in spring. Okay, he gives me the $25, the family gives me the $25 non-resident, okay? He continues, okay? I have a kid that comes in flat, so he didn't do spring. It's a new family, they pay. I have a kid that comes in conditioning camp that didn't do the 2 pre-seasons, okay? He pays, okay? I have a kid that only came in fall, okay, for my fall tackle, all right? He pays at that time. But I have a kid also that came and he stays with the program for spring, flag, conditioning camp, and fall. He pays one time. So this implies that each season that I have, which I have 4, okay, the family would be paying $100.
What we were just saying is that we would change that to be consistent, so they pay once per year. The challenge here is, Mike is saying, is that they have been charged twice a year
The
because,
same kid?
We kind of have. Set up, I think.
Yep.
yeah, so.
We can change that. If it's the same kid and they're already paid once. It's just a matter of record keeping, that's all.
Yeah.
Duplicative plan, right? Right, so one
It's per child.
per
Child.
Per year,
Per child per year.
per child per year.
That's
That's good verbiage.
Per year.
per athlete per year. Does that,
Everybody's clear? So it's per athlete per year. I do like the unduplicated, per unduplicated. Okay, so are we good there?
Yeah.
So then the next part is the schedule for submitting participant roster and fee. All youth sports organizations that utilize the city facility shall provide team rosters with a highlighted list of all non-resident participants to the Park and Rec Department no later than April 15th of each year. City staff will review the rosters and make a determination as to the required contribution to the Wade Brummal Scholarship Fund. That determination will be mailed to the youth sports organization with an invoice that must be paid within 30 days of the date mailed to the organization. In addition to their payment, organizations shall also provide their scholarship requests. Scholarship requests will be processed by July 1 of each year. So in talking to Angelique, this is sort of codifying what we've done in practice. He has generally sent it out by April and given you 30 days to pay it. What we've added here is a commitment that at the same time when you submit your scholarship request, that we'll try and answer those by the July 1 date. So that's trying to keep us everybody on accountable timeline.
It's a year.
I ask, how is that marketed though? Is that by each sport organization? Because then speaking to families, they're not aware. We talked about this last time. So is that with each sports organization? Is that something the city can put on our website and let people know, or?
So you'll see later on, we did say that we were going to create, I had the same issue because I am very concerned that there's money sitting there not going out to the kids, right? And so when I went to our website to look for our scholarship information, I couldn't find it. And I know where it's there. So I've asked staff to create a web page so that we'll call it out on our website. So we can do an overview of the way Brummal, we can put these scholarship guidelines, we can put the application there so everybody's there. But it is the responsibility for you all to be promoting the program to your families. That is the responsibility that we've expected from the groups. And so that was why one of the reasons we talked about, well, we're happy to take on that responsibility. But at the last meeting of the group, the consensus was that you all wanted to maintain the responsibility for it. So the responsibility for marketing that program to your families will remain with the groups.
So one question I had is a lot of, and again, we from the school board on here, but you know, I get notices every night from folks or the principal saying this is going on. Is there something the school district might be able to just plug into newsletters they're sending out?
They don't send newsletters out anymore. Peach jar. We pay to use Peach jar. And you get maybe 30 people that look at it. There's no value added to Peach jar.
I'm just trying to understand.
Yes.
I was watching and hoping we got something at least once a week, so I was just curious.
Yeah, my wife used to stuff the envelope for the schools.
They'll be there, they're online, it's digital.
So
You suggesting that the club should be loud about it, you saying the city, in order to attract new kids in, we should have a different platform. Be loud.
Well, I'm just saying one thing that I read every night, you know, the principal looks really good about saying something every night. I don't know if every school does that, but is there something once a quarter that could come out saying, hey, remember, we have the way Brummal for families that would like their children to play.
Right. Maybe the city newsletters.
yeah, that's where I was gonna go. So we do have, we will put it on our website. We put out newsletters on a regular basis. We do the Inside Santa Clara. There's different communications channels. When the policy gets adopted, we'll certainly put it on as a news story and then be able to communicate that. I can't do it nightly and we can't do it weekly, but we will do it at least on a quarterly basis in alignment with when we do the registration.
Just
I know at one point, like I went on to all of the groups' web pages because we were trying to figure out how the information is out there. And some groups had like for scholarship information, click here, and some groups didn't. So I think a lot of the groups have their own scholarship funding. And so like Brummal wasn't necessarily tied into it, but we can do a better job of working with each other. So that way it feeds back or however we need to do that. But once we get our site up and going, then we can continue that.
And that's really why we want to have a revised policy because up to now it's been a little bit loose. And so once we get it formally adopted, we can put it on the website. It's easy, right? Hopefully you got the chance to play with the checklist and saw its drop down menus, right? So we're trying to make it as easy as possible as we can for people to fill in the reports.
Just one, sorry, just a quick one. Just as I've been walking around speaking to families, so there's some bilingual families as well. Is there something we can do with bilingual as well, so they understand that?
Yeah, we can have it translated.
Like, it's pretty much as in.
Yeah, we can translate.
Thank you.
Okay. Was there any more on that section? Okay, so then just real clear, as a disclaimer, contributions to the fund do not constitute a guarantee. So just because you're paying into it doesn't mean you're going to get a grant. You still have to make the application. We have to go through the process, all that stuff. So just be clear. Everybody good with that? Okay. The next one is, the next section is the eligibility for scholarship awards. Actually, do you want to, I know you were online, but do you want to?
Oh, I'm Steve Robertson at SantaClaraCA.gov.
Thank you. So do you have the documents? We're just going through the document. Okay. Eligibility, scholarships are to be awarded to qualifying Santa Clara-based nonprofit youth sports organizations that pay the non-resident participation fee for the primary purpose of providing financial assistance to their qualifying Santa Clara youth residents so they may participate in organized youth sports programs. To be a qualifying Santa Clara youth resident, the player athlete must be 18 years and under, live or attend school in the city of Santa Clara, and wish to participate in a program offered by a nonprofit youth sports organization that utilizes a city facility to provide its programming. Eligible organizations must, 1, be current in their payment to the Wade Brummal Scholarship Fund, and 2, comply with Title IX, the federal law that prohibits discrimination on the basis of gender in schools that receive federal funding, including in their athletic programs in order to receive funds. Any questions on that section?
Our group might be the only one. We have one team, that's a mixed age.
It's like 4 to 40 something girls. It's our challenger team and it's comprised of players that all have like physical or mental disabilities of some sort. And so I'm wondering if we can include data amendments. There aren't only 20 like that. Like we have a few. 20 something.
What's the consensus of the group?
We have a special abilities program as well. Yeah. I don't have a problem including special abilities in it. It has a separate category.
Part of the registration.
Yeah.
No one on that team needs for anything. Not their uniform, it's nothing.
So how would we define that category of group?
Challenger programs,
Challenger program,
because that's
Special needs.
special needs programs.
Yeah.
I mean,
I got kids that are in school getting straight A's that are special need.
So that's where I'm trying to go to is at what point do we limit it? How do we define it so that it isn't, I have a reading disability versus I have a physical disability or a cognitive disability and who's deciding what that disability is?
I think the universal word is challenger. Everybody refers to challenger programs.
Special Olympics.
They can't play on other.
regular programs.
It's just complete.
It's like Special Olympic. I do it every year at Santa Clara U.
But it's, it's space and challenger Special Olympics programs.
Yeah, it-
Okay, so I've got the concept. I want to go back to the attorney's office and figure out what the appropriate language would be. And then whatever it is, I got the concept. We'll try and see what we can do legally with the legal.
Right.
yeah, it just would be an exception for that group. Right?
So age is expanded.
Yeah, age exempt.
Anything else on that section? You know what? I keep forgetting to check. Is there anybody online who's been in the chat?
No question from my.
Will you let me know? Okay, non-eligible expenses, school-based youth athletic programs are not eligible for funding. Applications for the reimbursement of field fees are also not eligible for funding.
Why did we give them money?
We heard last month. Just want to make sure that we reaffirm that that's the consensus of the group.
So that means, I'll use myself as an example. I'm a high school football coach at Santa Clara High. Have been for 12 years. I can't come and ask for a grant because I'm a school-based program. How about if I'm running a baseball tournament? Can I come and ask for a grant to run a baseball tournament?
Not according to what you guys discussed last month.
This is,
Yeah, baseball.
this is utilizing.
We're utilizing Wade Brummal fund.
That's. I think-
And if I'm a band instructor, it's the same application, right, for the high school.
Programs also are.
Well, I think you're making a different.
Good point. So there's two, it's a very good point. So those groups that you just talked about, Mike, would still be eligible for grants under the community grants program, right? You go for the 10,000.
But not from a Wade Brummal,
Wade Brummal.
because they've gotten it from the Wade Brummal before.
And the group last month said very clearly, no.
Thank you.
Yeah, they don't pay into it.
They don't pay into it.
Right.
School district should have stepped up and taken care of their own. But
Okay, so are we still?
Chip Mike, district is on here.
We're good?
That's a good consensus.
Okay. And then the other consensus was we were not going to use field use fees as an eligible expense, correct? Just waiting for shaking heads. Okay. Under the scholarship requests, a written up,
Sorry. Was there a full agreement from everybody on that? That last.
Application for
I think-
reimbursement for field use fees.
application signed. That's the online application, correct?
no, so this is money, so you remember the original reason we started to meet here was to talk about facility fees and a waiver of fees. And part of the discussion was we have this pot of money in Wade Brummel. Instead of, could we offset the fees that you pay for facility use by using some of the Wade Brummel? At last month's meeting, the answer was no. And so I just need to confirm that that's the answer, that, because that's, I've got to go back to council and tell them you guys have all agreed. We're not going to use this fund to pay offset facility use fees.
And we
You want it for scholarship.
To pay permit fees.
Exactly.
Yes.
Hey, we're on a roll here. Okay,
Kim, you can't hear heads nodding?
a scholarship request, a written application signed by the board president or executive director of the requesting youth sports organization must be submitted to the city of Santa Clara Park and Recreation Department on behalf of the sports organization for each scholarship requested. Included in this application shall be the team rosters with the accompanying proof of residency, name, address, and school attending. It should have zip code in here. I'm sorry, I messed up that. Zip code, name, address, zip code, and school attending for each participant. Scholarships requests shall be submitted in April of each year, by April 15th of each year to the Department of Parks and Recreation, along with the submission of team roster. So with those two edits, are we good? The addition of zip code and by April 15th instead of in April.
And it's up to the sports club to have something, as I said, being bilingual, to fill out on parent, send in. That's up to the individual, because the forms will be in English, you have to coaches that are sending it in. Correct.
So you're at this point, you're asking for the scholarship reimbursement. So you're going to give us the name. Yeah, it's up to the teams to do that.
Is it one per, like, a separate athlete, or can
No, you can just give us just the roster with all the names, all the information, as long as we get it by April 15th.
What has been helpful, what I've received it's like an Excel box and it's all the rosters and then maybe highlighted or some sort of notation of these 21 kids are my scholarship kids.
And we just submit a spreadsheet.
Yeah. Simple, straight across.
Yeah, just the way it's written for each scholarship requested, just wanted to clarify that.
Actually, we put a little line in there that says that what we just mentioned.
Each group of scholarships.
Well, just in case 15 of us aren't here, it's time so they get every year.
Okay, so do something that says an Excel spread, a single Excel spreadsheet with all participants or something.
We have, going back to the conversation of multiple seasons. Would a student then or an athlete then request a scholarship for the fall program, the spring program, the summer program, and then that would be 3 scholarships?
That was what I was saying, like, both on the paying to the city and then receiving needs to be, I would.
It needs to be the same, right? So if we're paying one time per athlete per year, then we're getting a scholarship. Athlete is eligible for a scholarship one time per year. So that should be there clarified. When we win the lottery and we're not here.
I mean, I guess for that, it's different per program, right? Because I mean, our program runs all year, so.
But you've only paid into it once, so you'd only be eligible to get one back, right? Otherwise, you're doing it by season, like Conley was saying.
Same athlete playing all year. I mean,
It could be, it's not for everybody though. Some people are registered multiple times
right,
a year.
You would, so you, in the case of the swim, you'd only get it once.
anyways, because they're Santa Clara residents.
See, and I see a potential problem with that in the fact that we have girls that are playing softball for us, they get a scholarship. Soccer starts, they sign up for soccer, they get a scholarship. So is that,
And that's the resident versus we're paying the 25 for the non-resident.
right?
So what's the group want to do with that?
So maybe we go back to the issue about maybe it's per sport,
For sport,
per year, right?
for sport.
See, the only thing I'm just thinking, the our kids that get the scholarship in the spring, if they play in fall, it's gonna be the same kids, so we try to get them, we try to cover their costs, we try to cover the costs, it's the same few kids, each time.
Yeah.
Whereas like the group of recipients is much smaller than the group of payees into the scholarship.
It'd be really sad for kids to get scholarship in the spring and then not be able to play in the fall because they can't.
That's why I'm reading it out, like what it should be, what is the.
Oh, it's like us, we'd still give them the scholarship.
Yeah.
You're still gonna play. You just request the parent do 10 hours in the snack shack or something like that, right?
So are we saying,
That never
I
happens.
just want to be clear what we're saying here, under the Wade Brummal scholarship, are we saying they're eligible for one scholarship per year?
One per sport.
Per sport, one scholarship per sport.
Per season.
First unit.
Per season. Per season.
Per group, per nonprofit,
For the organization.
right? So I can't go and play with Craig and play with Linda in the same fall season. Or can't. You can go for.
Yeah, you can play football and baseball at the same time.
Well, I'm playing flag and baseball at the same time all the time.
Those kids are. That's a different.
It's clear as mud. So can we go back, please? So under the collection of the fees, we said once per year. So you're only paying into the fund once per year. However, now we're saying that we're going to be giving it as many times as a kid plays in different sports. Right?
You got two different subjects there.
To go anywhere, right? We're gonna run out of money.
Got two different subjects there. One, you're paying for non-residents. Okay, the majority of the kids that come, that can't afford it are Santa Clara residents. Okay, so we don't pay for those kids into the Wade Brummal anyway.
That is the fund that pays for them to play. So
Right.
that's the pot of money. If they're not putting into it and we're using it, we're only collecting it once, we're paying it out multiple times.
When's the last time we've adjusted the fee?
That's what we have last.
We haven't, it's always been 25.
Well-
It is to wait about right now.
Because of COVID and because of everything, we've got money in the pot. It's averaged $30,000 per year.
I think we talked about this last time, that it's a good thing if we run out, like, I mean, not, but if we're helping kids, that's what we wanna do. And if we get to that point where we're close to it, then we can talk about raising, fundraising.
Adjusted.
Yeah, like, I think
We should, I mean, hell,
Sometimes-
everything. I mean, everything costs more.
I think people are coming to our city because we're cheaper already.
absolutely, we are cheaper,
Yeah, I think
absolutely,
we
we have
should-
nice facilities.
We should probably raise the.
Yeah, this is the.
But that costs, right, the cost is what's in it,
Yeah.
right? It's not lower than it was 5
But
years
they don't
ago.
like it, they say in there. Yeah.
So then
But
what
I
is
think we
that,
should
what is
raise
that fee? What would everybody, 50, that's fair?
I don't know if you want to double it right off the get-go.
So what if you adjust to CPI? And I don't know what that gets us.
CPI would be a good start, yeah.
It's equitable, it's a fair standard.
Standard that's used everywhere.
You could do that. I don't know what the CPI is. Well, Gina's not in this room. It's
Yeah, that's usually bounces between.
about 10%, I think.
1%.
Around 10, typically.
But it was 10 this last time. Yeah, I thought it was, but we can check it.
Maybe last year. I think it's a lot lower.
Yeah, see.
22.
Between two and
Boy, that's not even worth doing an increase.
I look.
Okay, so what if we do, if we're gonna increase it, what I would really like to avoid is the reason why we're here, right? We increased it all at once and we went from one thing to another without some kind of graduation. So if we were to increase it, could we do an increase over 2 years, over 3 years, whatever to get to it? So that it's, instead of getting to 50 right away, maybe it's 35 and then 50 or something like that that gets it done.
But if we still continue to have a surplus, and I know that's not a good word, but do we need to increase it?
So here's the deal. So what we talked about last time is that we were going to focus on trying to get as many scholarships out in the first year. And that if there was money left over, then it would be going into a capital fund. So we could do that and raise the fees, see where we're at. And that money would then go to the teams for your capital improvements for this next year. And then if we had to adjust, we can adjust it again.
You should be up like $5 this year, 30, then 35.
$5 increments.
Yeah,
That brings the fee to.
nobody cares about $5, but they do about 10.
It's not worth the change.
So if you did a step function you were talking about, so you did 35, 43, 50, or whatever over 3 years. Use that money that you're gonna get in the back pocket, you have that, to see if we start marketing it very well, and we get more kids that are playing. As Shay said, we wanna use up that 30,000. It's a good problem if we go over, we can do fundraisers, we can do other stuff to get another 2 or 3 grand, or whatever it is. But let's start with 35 now.
But what if we start this year, we're also saying that we're gonna review it every 2 to 3 years, right? And so we figure out what that cadence is, but this year it could be the same. And then we offer the scholarship to the same kiddo or whatever they play, like, so there's no limit to what they can apply for the year. And we see how that goes, and then we can report back out.
Because the hope is with this conversation and more marketing and advertising, more you all and other groups will collect more because you're submitting those scholarships. Where in past, we've had 2 or 3 groups out of the 7 or 8 that we work with, or more than that, that actually request funds.
So what I would suggest, kind of keeping that in mind, but keeping in mind the city's budget, right? So we keep it flat for this year, for this next season, whatever it is. But effective, because we go on a 2-year budget cycle. So in year 1, we do the increase, and then year 2, we do a second increase, so that we can still gauge it. But we maintain it the same. So the 35 wouldn't happen until the fall of next year. Yeah, because we wouldn't be doing any sports until then, right? Because they would have already paid their summer ones by July 1. And so it wouldn't happen until fall of 2025, when the $35 would go into play. Does that work? Okay, so I'm gonna go back and change the other part to 25. I mean, 35. Oh, hold on. 35 as of July of 2025. Okay.
July 1st.
And then the following year to 50?
The following July 1st.
Yeah, so good.
$15. Yeah. That would get you to 50.
Is that okay? I think you say 3 years, it's 2 years.
On 35,
It's not a crazy number.
You have to see where you're at, right? I mean,
We have a 2-year budget, so it would be good to have the first 2.
You want it in line with your budget process so that everything's
Mhm.
moving at the same time, so it's easier to track and.
If we are gonna raise it, maybe raise it, keep it the same for those 2 years, and then revisit, like Angelique was saying, just because we don't know, we're changing a lot of things with the scholarship program, see how it is, and revisit, need to raise it again.
35 for the first.
35 for the first 2 years?
Yeah. 35 the first 2 years, and then we reassess.
Are we good there?
Just curious, how many, do we have an estimate?
You know what? I had that document. Hold on. Let me pull that up. Where did I see it?
So I just wanted to see.
That includes the grades on top of the scholarships. Like, so, yeah, we've got like some.
How many kids are paying the $25? Yeah, he was gonna divide it 30,000.
it was about $30,000 they took in, didn't they?
Divided by $25.
That's
There's not 1,200 kids. There's not 1,200 kids.
No, none of the way Brummal.
the idea was.
Brummal was strictly $25.
I have for this year,
I've collected 696, there were 696 non-residents that was collected.
696.
Yeah, good question. So how do you get the 30,000 if you only have 25 times 696?
So these 700 people that paid into the Wade Brummal at $25 a head, this includes
21,000 right now that we've collected. It's not.
this includes organizations like the Aquamates.
Average, some years we've had more, some years we've had less, so it's an average of 30.
It includes organizations like the Aquamates that are adults.
Aquamates does not pay into the Wade Brummal because they have their own fundraising. That's part of their agreement, but, and there's some groups in here because of facilities being down that haven't paid because they haven't been using our facility. So that's reflected in that number. But so far this year, 696, $21,000.
I was just trying to understand the tenor. Sorry.
So all in agreement, $35, we're gonna recommend a $35 increase, 2 years, effective July 1.
Correct. Effective July 1, 2025.
Everybody, yes? Okay, so then we're gonna, that's the scholarship part of it, and let's go to the, what we talked about for having the excess funding, what I call excess funding. So again, historically, approximately 30,000 is collected annually for the Wade Brummal Scholarship Fund. Oops, why is that? Sorry about that. Every effort will be made to work with the local nonprofit sports groups to allocate this grant funding to support the participation of disadvantaged Santa Clara youth player athletes through the scholarship fund. In the event a balance in excess of 15,000 remains in the scholarship fund at the end of the fiscal year, that balance shall be carried over to the next fiscal year for a one-time round of grants. This will be an invitation-only round of grants available to those organizations who contributed to the fund the prior year. Eligible expenses for this round of funding will be as follows. 1, relevant program costs, reimbursement of new equipment, field repairs, capital project and maintenance costs. Capital projects must be for facilities within the city of Santa Clara and be accessible to the public. And 2, reimbursement of costs related to additional competition expenses, i.e. travel. Reimbursements of this nature will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. Receipts and itemized list of expenses are required for consideration. Only those expenses related to qualifying youth participants shall be eligible for reimbursement. If we've done the grants, we've done the scholarships, we've done the grants, and a balance remains, the final priority will be as follows. Requests from non-contributing Santa Clara-based youth sports organizations and programs. Groups who do not pay into the program for non-residents, but request scholarships for qualifying player athletes of the city of Santa Clara. An online form for these grants is available on the City of Parks and Recreation Department website under the tab Scholarships and Grants, City of Santa Clara Wade Brummal application. The minimum amount of grants for this grant shall be $500 with a maximum of $5,000, subject to the appropriation approval limits that I'll go into next. So again, this would only be if we have money left over. More than 15,000, and that is because we get sometimes we get late requests, and so I want to make sure we don't overexpend, so we have some money in the balance, and that whatever money is available may be made available to the groups who contributed the prior year and can be used for these expenses. Everybody in agreement? Got questions?
Is the goal to get it to zero? Is there a limited minimum threshold that you want to keep the account at?
I'd like to at least keep the 15,000.
So if it's 20,000, 5,000 more grants to go.
I think it would depend on the need of the groups, right? If there's something there, but
That's the
the
range.
goal is try, at least at the end of the year, we could always do a second round if we've gotten to the end of the year and everything's been figured out. Right? That's my concern, is that we clear two out too quickly.
So it brings up a good point, and I had this question. Number 3, I don't think we discussed.
We didn't, but we talked about whether or not Santa Clara groups who don't contribute,
It was a question in email.
yeah,
Yeah.
So
whether they should contribute. So
All right.
No, I personally answered that not paying into the pot, they shouldn't get taken. That was my personal.
but if the intent is to provide scholarships to kids in Santa Clara, and there are kids on their team who are Santa Clara residents, isn't that the intent of this program? right? If there's money left over, isn't it the intent to try and get kids to have scholarships so they can play?
I think it should be, I think it should be a requirement for being able to access the facilities. It should be included in it. But I think we all should be part of it. Like, there shouldn't be, if not, then it should be tiered. So like folks that pay into it, there's a min max, and then there's a lower min max for those that are not contributing to it. But I don't think it would be, I don't think there should be any equality in that case if an organization is not contributing to the program.
And that's how this is structured. So this is structured so that money goes out to scholarships first, then it goes out to the grants who have the people who have contributed. And then if there's any money left, then they can apply.
That's the third priority.
That's the third priority, yeah.
If you dissolve the money in the first two priorities,
There's no money.
nothing for the third priority. That's only if there's $2,500 left. To remain the 15, you got 1,750, you take 2,500 to priority number 3.
Yeah, it's just,
The way I read it.
there are teams here, they're based here that don't have any non-residents and they're serving Santa Clara residents. Why would we not want to allow those children to have scholarships so they can play?
That's kind of what you're saying.
So,
Yeah, I thought it was based on.
Well, Lions football falls in there because Lions football, from 1960 have been a Santa Clara based program. Okay. Yes, but when the school district took over my facilities, I'm no longer using Santa Clara city facilities.
Pushed him out into that
So,
category.
so
Push me.
Brummal doesn't.
Push Lions football, I pushed Lions football into category 3.
Not just any really.
Non-contributing or non-profit, non-contributing. No, I don't think anybody for profit should get a penny.
It should be nonprofit.
Yeah.
It's like crazy, like,
Yeah.
somebody's making $2 million a year, it's gonna be.
They
paid
shouldn't
for.
come get a nickel from us.
Remember, I'm trying to get my lights fixed.
okay, so with that addition, are we, that section?
Gonna add the word nonprofit.
Before we go off that one, are you good with the minimum and the maximum of the grant limits? I put that there because you gotta ask for a certain amount of money to have it even worth the time going through the process. So I just want to make sure you guys were good with that.
Designate within it timelines as far as how we're notified and what those timelines would be within
For the grant process?
but as far as, we know the scholarships go out by a certain date. How are we notified of any excess and what is the timeline process for that?
I'll enter a timeline. We'll have to look at that. Okay, we'll do that. The last section relates to the approval limits. Requests under 2,500 shall be subject to the review and approval of the Director of Parks and Recreation. So we raised that, I think, from 500 to 2,500. And then over 2,500 shall be forwarded to the Park and Rec Commission for review and recommendation to the Director. The Commission reserves the right to approve partial funding or requests or deny requests in total. And only one request per organization can be submitted per funding cycle. So again, these are just the excess grants. You can only submit one proposal. Are we good with that? Yeah. Okay, can you pull the checklist real quick? I think so.
Yeah, that's it.
Is that it?
Yes, a
Grant
PDF.
application. It's just a checkbox with receipts.
It was a PDF, I remember that.
One moment, please.
Yeah.
So again, we want, in the spirit of trying to make it as easy as possible for folks, we've created the online form, so you can just do the drop downs. And the receipt dates, the vendor names, the items, the receipts attached, just so that we get, one of the challenges we've had is we've not gotten information back in a form that is easy to follow. And so oftentimes it's missing. And so we have to go back to the organization saying, hey, we need this or we need that. This is intended to try and make it as easy as possible. If you coming down on the expense category. You can see, you pick which expense it is, you just click on it and to add in, right? We do have this available that we can have it on the phone, so you could do it off your phone if you needed to do it. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible. No, you don't have to handwrite it, or choose to handwrite it if you want to, but to do it on the computer. But this will make it easier so we have all the information with the process as quickly as possible. So any questions about this form or how to use it, or any suggestions?
Looks pretty straightforward.
Okay, so we're good?
To use it for a while and see. It looks fine. Me, I mean, just looking at it.
Okay, so that's the Wade Brummal. Thank you so much for all the feedback, and hopefully we've incorporated everything that people have agreed to, and we'll do one more revision. I'll send it out. We are going to take it to Park and Rec Commission on November 18th. So that's the next step in the process, because they are the official Park and Rec review. And then that'll go to council on December 3rd. So if you want to put that in your calendars, please feel free to come. We are recording these meetings. So your input has been incorporated, just so that everybody has consensus on what we agreed to in this meeting, because that we really need everybody to go forward, having agreed to this document and supporting it. So if you have any issues, now's the time that we need to work them out. Are we good?
Last time about this, potentially moving forward to like a foundation where we could have other organizations put into the spot too. Or that process.
This is intended to be for people who use city facilities, right? The city is exploring, and hopefully you guys have all participated and provided your input into the Parks Master Plan. We do want to create a Parks Foundation at some point. I don't know what that's going to look like in the timeline for that. If at that point, and we are able to create one, and they want the Wade Brummal Scholarship Program to be administered through the foundation, certainly something we can look at. But right now it's coming to us, because that's the way we've got it set up.
So there's an existing foundation already?
There is not. That's why we want to establish one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's one of the things that we have on our list. And again, my hope is that you've all expressed that in the Parks Master Plan, so it gets recorded and gets advanced. So if you haven't had a chance, please add your feedback into the Parks Master Plan. Okay. So that's that section. So congratulations, we got finished. We got one item off the table here. Okay, so then the next item, we wanted to spend, yeah. We've got about 20, actually, can you put the maintenance one first? We've got about 30 minutes. And again, want to be very clear. This is not the big end all of the conversation. Just like we had 3 meetings on Wade Brummal, I fully expect that we're going to need 3 meetings to talk about fees. So please, this is just to lay the groundwork of where our conversations are going. So one of the things that at the last meeting we were asked related to fees. And so the question became, where do our maintenance fees go? What work is being done? And those kind of things. So one of the items that I sent to you was a Word document, and I'm going to ask Dale to present the information in the Word document. But this is really intended to give you a sense of what work is being done on the fields, because there was a question of what level of maintenance, and understanding that this is not related to fees, and I'll address your question that you sent to me afterwards. But this is really to give you a sense of what work is being done at the fields, what our city staff is doing. And I recognize that it does vary across the city, and it also varies, quite honestly, it's varied significantly over this past year. We've had a lot of turnover in our department. We have a number of vacancies that we're working to fill. And so we're trying very hard to provide a consistent level of maintenance across the city, but without a doubt, there's been an impact. So full disclosure there, we're doing our best that we can with the available resources. We're going to hopefully do a recruitment soon. And if you know people who are looking for jobs, please let them know that we're going to have ground maintenance worker positions open. But this is the level this is the kinds of things that we are doing now. So I'm going to turn it over to Dale, who's going to talk you through that, and then I'll come back and talk about the costs.
That's the new one.
Very-
Okay. Okay, great. Angelica, you can control this or I'm in control? Okay, good. I'm like, okay, how come I don't have control? Okay.
How do you feel, right?
Good.
No.
Okay. For a lot of athletic fields, really the foundation of all that, that's in this document is the foundation is really training and, having staff that are professional, making sure that they have all of their certifications, which includes from the Department of, Pesticide Regulations for the QACs, which is qualified applicator certificates. Also being trained landscapers, and to keep current with that, with a lot of continuing education, they need at least 20 every 2 years. And then we stack that on top of having a PCA, a pest control advisor, who has to write the recommendations for the different pest control products. So I do that for the entire group. And without that type of ongoing training, we wouldn't be able to provide the level of service that we provide for all of you for the athletic fields. And our purpose behind that is to make sure that you have the best fields possible that we can provide. It's a top priority for us because we know it's very well in demand by the community and serves the community on a very broad level. And one of our vulnerable populations is our youth. And we want to make sure that even during COVID, and coming out of COVID, we wanted to make sure that we were maintaining the field at the proper level for all of you. So when we look at sand-based fields, because there's a difference between sand-based and native soil fields. Sand-based fields allow our staff to push the fields as fast as we can or cut back, primarily related to the drainage and the water mechanics that happen within the soil that allows for a lot of rain. If we have to leach anything, which is not usual, but we can push it with a lot of fertilizers, and also it links to the type of grass that we use on the different type of field. So typically, if you see a sand-based field, it will be coupled with a type of Bermuda grass, some sort of hybrid Bermuda. Bermuda is used because it will take very high traffic, very high wear. In fact, if you were to go to several parks, and if there was an area that was trampled a lot by kids, you'll probably see common Bermuda grass growing in those areas because it would be the only grass that would survive when there's a lot of traffic. And so sometimes you see it in random places. However, it's the foundation for whenever you have grass fields, the best grasses that are most aggressive and with growth and that can take heavy traffic, that would be the type of grass that we would use. So for both natural fields, there's overseeding that happens all the time. Typically for Usaka Park, we use perennial ryegrass, and that will fill in all the gaps between the Bermuda grass when it gets wear spots. And that allows us to have more games or allow you to have more practices. And that is done perpetually. In the past, it was done once in a while, but try to keep that up so that there's not a lot of spaces. And by continually overseeding through the season with ryegrass, that way, when there are divots in the field, you may not notice that maybe it's only 10% germination, but over time, subsequently, if you keep doing it, over a period of time, you would have 100% germination of the seed that you originally put on. So it's a matter of attrition, but we just keep on it to make sure that the grass stays full in spite of usage. The Bermuda grass type is latitude 36. Fields are treated for broadleaf weeds with 2 herbicides, and that's to make sure that at least it has a grass cover on it at all times. Both natural turf fields are verticut in one direction, then opposing direction later in the season. And all of this is really to stimulate the growth of the turf, so that when you have wear and you start cutting it in different directions, it'll tiller and spread out instead of just going in one line. you'll have it spread in different directions and continue to fill out. Also, we have the fields are mowed for the Bermuda grass twice per week. The cut can vary from 5/8 of an inch to 3/4 of an inch. And it can even go lower in some specialty cases, but it has to be cut twice a week at least. So that takes a lot of time. We have one staff member that's out there who's doing that he's assigned to that particular site. It's challenging. He has a lot of knowledge. We've trained him well, and he's doing a phenomenal job out there. But it takes a lot of input to make sure that that grass is always at the right condition. Fields are also lined on an as-needed basis in season once per week. Also deep aerated and top dressed with microprill horticultural gypsum twice per year. The gypsum comes in because in sand-based fields and in our particular climate, and we have recycled water at that facility, then you have salt accumulation. So the gypsum is used to counteract the effects of the salt and keep the pH in check so that the grass can grow. Because a while back, we had challenges with the salinity and not having the grass go down further into the soil to root deeper. So when you'd run on the field, it would clump more. So the gypsum is helping to keep that suppressed and making sure that the salinity does not get out of hand. Because if it's too salty, the grass is not going to grow, essentially. And also with the aeration, we try to aerate as much as possible. The more you aerate, the more air is in the soil, and the more that there'll be percolation in the soil to get water running through it. Perennial ryegrass is also sowed in thin areas and can be concentrated in thin areas as needed. Fertilization happens in the growing season, 4 to 8 week intervals. We aim to put on about 7 pounds of nitrogen per year. If you look on any bag of fertilizer, if you go to your Home Depot or Lowe's, you'll see that there's numbers on the bag of fertilizer and NPK. So those are the first numbers of nitrogen. So the pure nitrogen that we're aiming to get on the fields, because it's Bermuda grass, takes and it grows very fast, we push it to the max and put 7 pounds of nitrogen per year on the fields, but we have to space it out so it doesn't burn. And depending on what we're doing, we adjust the amount up to 1 pound or down to 1/4 pound or 1/2 pound, depending on what we see and how it's responding. And if it had a lot of use, then we'll try to push it as much as possible, irrigate more to get the grass to recoup faster. And then we use solid tines during the year and during your season so that we're poking holes in the grass surface, but it won't interrupt play, right? A lot of this we can do more on the sand-based fields just because of the nature of sand and the tines will go through. On the native field, let's say a fragile field, that's a challenge. We only can do that at certain times of the year, or at the homestead, same thing, native soil, good for some things, but we can't aerate as much. And when we have too much rain, then we're kind of we're stuck in a pattern because the water can't go through it, right? But on a sand field, we try to aerate as much as we possibly can without limit. Okay. Then in between there are other tasks that we do. Sometimes we may put not nutrients, but vitamins on it or certain organic products to just try to stimulate the grass depending on what's going on. We also do tests on to see the insect populations, and then we apply insecticides depending on what we're seeing and what the populations are. So we monitor that a lot as well. We would only apply an insecticide if it reaches a certain thresholds, then we would apply. If not, it could be on a tolerable level, and we would just leave things just the way it is. For Reading Grant Sports Park, I would say it's very similar, different Bermuda grass in a natural field on this side over here. Very aggressive grass, and I believe this is the one that they're using at PayPal field. But very aggressive grass, very similar process because this is also a sand-based field, so the processes would follow similarly to what I explained for youth soccer park. The difference here is that we are using a pure Bermuda grass here and not overseeding with the ryegrass, which is unique for this particular site. So in that case, we're trying to make sure this grass just stays, as healthy as possible, not have cross contamination with equipment from that site to this site, because we'd be stuck if there's a health problem with the grass. We don't want to have a mechanism to oversee with rye, because this type of Bermuda grass is very aggressive. If we treat it well, it will fill in the bare spots, and just by pushing it with fertilizer, we can get it to do exactly what we need to do, and watch the amount of gains that we put on it. Because if we go too far with the gains and if we put practice on it, then we could have a problem. So we really have to balance it, particularly with this field, because it's a pure Bermuda. At youth soccer park, we have the perennial rye to help us out, to fill the spots. Here, we don't have that option, so we have to be extra careful with this one. But as far as the maintenance practices, they would be almost identical to youth soccer, because they're both sand field. Yep.
Shame on me to ask this question. So how often, I know our son plays here,
Mhm.
but other than like Saturdays or these fields, this field over here, the natural grass, any day besides Saturday?
I'm not sure. Angelique, do you have that?
Thursday night exercise class that goes on, it's an adult, like Rebec's type class. And then if there happens to be some issue with field sharing out here, we might push one team over there. But there are no regular practices that are out there. It's mostly weekend use.
Then a follow-up question is why did you just put this type of field over here? What was the reason for not?
Why didn't we put natural grass?
Yeah, why did you put natural grass back here instead of just the same type of field you have here?
I think because if there is players will always prefer natural grass. So we always knew that we have to have a natural grass option for players whenever there's a game for different age kids. So we didn't want to have just a completely synthetic facility.
And you did another thing you pointed out is that
Yeah.
maintenance here. You say you can basically fix a cat food, is what he said, versus all the maintenance you have to do over there.
Yeah, but the capital input for here is much higher going in. So when you look at it, if you were to compare like a synthetic field to a natural field, generally at the end of that 12-year period, they come out pretty even, but it's just all of the inputs are put in here up front. So the hit is very hard. And whereas for the natural field, you're metering it, the costs are just continuing at a consistently, while this is just more grooming and care. It still needs its cost, and now and then you'll have tears in it, but the amount of maintenance that goes into it on a daily basis is considerably less than that. But over time, that catches up, and they come out pretty even.
I know when this place was designed, the community outreach meetings, this is what the majority of the community wanted, was one real turf and the rest artificial, so we could play during rainy season, because that has been a problem in the past with just turf, with the natural turf fields. You can't play on them as much during the rainy season. So that was the reason we.
Yeah.
And you said the landscape spoken,
Pardon?
the way.
In general, depending on where you are on the country and the amount of games that you play on it, but I shouldn't say games, I would say the usage. It could be 12 years. If the usage is extremely high, it could be shorter, right? Synthetic turf, it's a carpet. So if you wear your carpet out by the number of steps, you will wear it out by the foot. So
We will wear this out for 12 years easily. So this
Mhm.
field here,
Mhm.
how much less usage can it get versus YSP? And 1 and 3 is different because one gets
Right.
far less sunlight.
yeah,
Or it gets less sunlight because the stadium versus the race.
Because of the stadium shed.
We would have to look at the number of games because we're using the natural one at Youth Soccer Park for games.
Yep.
They should be pretty similar. Because the hybrid is different. This is more aggressive and thicker than the one at Youth Soccer Park. So it has that advantage. So it's, even though they're both Bermudas, they're almost like apples and oranges because of how aggressive this
They
one
also
is.
have smaller bodies on the scale.
True, yeah, and all of that counts. The older they get, the more wear, the more divots, the deeper the divots, yeah.
And then, sorry, I was gonna ask, do we limit, we actually been told, we saw our, you limit how many days, like, or how many events are held on those natural fields? We heard of something like 50 or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the number, you may know the number, but we prefer that is more for games, ideally for games. And I think everyone is pretty familiar with how the rotation should go, and you all have been excellent with that, particularly over the last 5 years. So there's a pretty good balance in how they're rotated. What you don't want is just one field is a preferred field, and you just keep playing on that, or playing or practicing whatever, using the field. Because once you get over a certain number, then you'll have field replacement. Like if you get up to, let's say, 150 events on that field, most likely at the end of the season, you're gonna have to replace the entire turf or at least the crown. So it's by quantity and also size of the player. Yeah, does that help? Okay, all right. How are we doing with time? Yeah, so I think you got for the sand field, how that works. Baseball, you know, all the fields that we have for baseball, they're native soils. That's what we call them. That native soil that exists here is what we use. So the grass type is different. It's gonna be a perennial, it's gonna be a rye bluegrass mix that is used on that. And also the height is gonna be different. It's gonna be taller just because of the nature of the type of grass it is. It follows similar regular cuts, but the cuts are spaced out. You know, they're typically once a week. Also the nitrogen, because it's a clay-based soil, so you can't push the grass as much. So therefore the amount of nitrogen, and also the native soil has a lot more native fertility in it. So it doesn't need as much fertilization in it. So therefore, the amount of nitrogen we put in it is gonna be less, which is 3 to 5 pounds per 1,000 square feet per year. And of course you do, at the end of the year, there's certain procedures that we go through. And also at the beginning of the year, it takes a lot of work to get the fields back in shape, burn in the lines. All of that is a lot of work behind the scenes that you don't really see until the field is ready. It's like, there you go. And now you all can pick up from there and then prep the field on do your regular pre-game preps and so on before that. But a lot of input goes in before on all the different types of fields, with soil tests that are done before to see where we are with fertility. What are the needs for the particular year? Then typically we do 2 soil tests as well. The 2 wouldn't be as necessary with the clay-based field or the native soil, but for the sand-based field, because it has so much percolation in it, having 2 soil tests really is important, because the fertility is kind of on the edge, where the other one, the native soil, where all the baseball or softball is, those are gonna go slower, less nitrogen, better native fertility, but different type of grass. So the inputs are a little bit different and less than a grass field as well. Then prior to the season opening, I think I covered that. Then infield mix is brought into condition, and then graded. Irrigation always has to be adjusted with sprinkler heads, etc. For foul lines, as I said, they're chemically burnt in with herbicides, and damage or missing fencing or backstop boards are then replaced at that time. In-season maintenance, just the regular mowing, continue with the fertilization. Infield mixes, turfus, a lot of just day-to-day prep on our side, and also from your side as well, to make sure that everything's ready. And then, as I said, with the other fields, there could be other, depending on what's happening with the field. There could be other inputs that we put in to make sure that the turf is healthy. Or there could be, let's say, we have grubs. And all of a sudden, over just a few days, grubs are just eating the field up, which you all have seen before. Yeah.
My son practices there. And so my question is this a year long when you do this, baseball field, is this year long or is this just fall and spring or what?
It's year long with certain of the practices. The mowing, the aeration, depending on how the usage of the field also, and with the rainfall at the different times of the year, we may have to redo parts of the field or with the mound. So that is based on the usage, but then there's specific things that we're doing at the two ends of the year. Did I answer or no?
Yeah, it's right now, I haven't been there in like 3 or 4 weeks, so I didn't see what
Mhm.
it looks like. It's not as nice as it was.
Yeah, sometimes they're grubs and there's a product you put down earlier in the year, but then you still can have grubs there, and then you have crows that are flying in, and then the minute you see those on the field, it's like, okay, something's wrong. And if it's a little bit, it'll start here, and 2 days, you'll have 500 square feet. Yeah, so it's something we are cognizant of, but it takes a lot of vigilance. So if you see that also, let us know.
So also last year,
Yeah.
the bases, so they're not staying, but
Right.
first and third, were kind of part of it. Is that something that can be looked at?
Yes, yes. And that has to be done. Those are things that, depending on usage, how things were moved during the season, we may have to come back and make those adjustments to home plate and everything for the peg. Yeah.
Those kinds of things, if you communicate that to Marlon and I, and we make sure to work with our parks team.
Yeah, you get it.
Notify them.
Usually prior to the spring season, there is a main maintenance that's scheduled to be able to prep the entire games at that.
I feel like last year you guys really overhauled it. Yeah,
That's yes.
Yeah, you put a lot of work into it last year.
Yeah, it takes a lot. I mean, it should look seamless, and that's what we want to make it look like. We want to make it look easy, but behind it, there's a lot of work and knowledge and a lot of conversation. I'm not personally on the field, but my team and the managers are there, and also the foreman, and they give me the feedback. So I know the feedback. That's why I said grub, because the information is very fluid within the Parks Division that's taking care of the fields. So if there's anything odd, I hear about it, because then, especially if it's an herbicide issue, weed issue, or an insect issue, they're gonna tell me, because it means that programming could be impacted. Also, we wanna make sure that the field is contained, it's locked. If there are certain treatments that have to be put down, and ideally, we wanna get ahead of it before it impacts any of the programming. But the information is continually flowing, and comes comments from you that go back to Marlon, then back to us. That loop works well. So if you see something that's off, definitely use the channels, because it goes all the way back up to the top, and then also check, it's like a feedback loop. We'll get it, and also we'll get the feedback from you that everything is, okay, and then program is continuing.
I feel like the first thing, after this week saying, cost is great, we talk about this stuff all the time.
Yep.
So there's very aware.
Yeah, you guys do a great job. Beautiful.
Thanks, we wanted to say that way.
Yeah, you guys are-
I think one of the differences is like, we do have assigned personnel
Mhm.
at each site where they have the ownership of that place versus, other fields you don't know who you're gonna get that comes in and does repair, but there's really no ownership of that site, which I think is a huge.
Yeah.
Different ways with all the things that happen, right? And
Yes.
there's all kinds of stuff that happens
Yeah,
throughout.
Yeah.
they can try and put it-
Yeah. Unfortunately, the guy who is at,
It's thick.
it was yesterday, it was his last day, but there's always that transition period, but give us the feedback. because he is excellent. And he loves what he's doing. He's always been that way from the day he came here, from the day he started working for Santa Clara as an as-needed employee all the way through. So that knowledge is being transferred, but also each site is so unique that we have to know if there's something that's missing, and we're not gonna take it as a negative. It's just, we need to know because that person may not realize if these couple of little pieces that may not seem significant, but really make a difference. We need to know those pieces, particularly over the next, I would say, few months. I would say the next 6 months, we need to know that information so we bring that person completely up to speed. Yeah. I think that's all I have for now. Yes. Yes.
So, what we mentioned earlier, you were saying is we've got great staff, right? I mean, they are very committed to their facilities. Unfortunately for us, we have a number of retirements, people like the member who's moving out of the area. People have gone to other agencies. We have a really significant retirement happening at the end of the year, which is Doug, who is going to be retiring in December sometime. He's the park manager over half the city, okay? The other park manager went to go manage the cemetery. So we have 2 brand new park managers managing the city. So there is going to be an impact. And just want to be full disclosure on that. So what Dale was talking about, the importance of the communication, it's going to be really important for us in the next few months, so that we can continue to provide the level of service that everybody expects and that the guys like to do, the folks like to do. So please let us know if there's an issue. Don't worry, nobody's sensitive about it. We want to be responsive. You know, the things happen. For example, the Earl Carmichael issue that happened this weekend. For those of you who don't know, there was a fire on Saturday night, and the concession building is pretty much gone on the second floor with significant damage. It was all black when we went by. It was all smoke. So the staircase. The staircase, the bathroom. So we're going out on Tuesday with the inspectors to see what the damage is. So we've already talked to the insurance folks. But those are the kinds of things that are happening in the parks. We're seeing a lot of vandalism. I think I mentioned that earlier. So if you guys are seeing it, please report it. Tell the folks that are there working in the parks, we have to really work together on making sure that we can do this stuff. But as you can hear from Dale, there's a lot of work that goes into the maintenance. And David had asked about the question about the costs. The Parks Division itself is funded at $12.3 million. That funds all of the park maintenance. In our case, we do not allocate by amenity. So all of our amenities are within a larger park. And so as you mentioned, we have individuals who are assigned to a park and they're responsible for all amenities. So we don't track the funds. No, I appreciate that. I just want to make sure we understand.
Yeah.
So they're assigned the entire park. We don't break it out by amenity. So when we talk about the fees, we'll talk, it's more about how do we fit in the market, right? And so we know that if we were to charge all the costs that go into maintenance, no one would be able to afford the fee, right? And so we go into what's a reasonable cost given the category. In this case, it's nonprofit youth organizations. What's that category and what's the market? We don't want to be at the high end. We can't afford to be at the low end, right? And so what's that middle? And so I do have a slide that has it, and I'll send it out to you because we're out of time. But the next meeting, we'll spend the time talking about fees and about where we're out there. What I'd like you to think about between now and that meeting is categories, right? So right now we have one category for nonprofit organizations. It doesn't seem rational to us to charge a nonprofit adult group the same that we're going to charge a nonprofit youth group, but that's how it's set up right now.
You also should consider a nonprofit with paid employees versus a nonprofit with volunteers.
Those are the discussions. That's what I want you to think about. What are those categories that you think? Should we have a nonprofit rate for Santa Clara based organizations, just like we have in the way Brummal? And then we'd have a different fee for those who are not based in Santa Clara. Do we have, but want to use our fields? So all of those things are things that we need to think about on the categories. And so for the next meeting, and I've sent you out an email, and I think Kim sent you out Zoom links, the 14th, the 21st, and three dates. Yeah, I'm hoping we can come to have a discussion on the first meeting, come back with a draft, and then finalize, just like we did with the Ray Brummal, right? Just so we can kind of continue the conversation. Because I don't think we're going to get one meeting. But that's what I want to think about for the next meeting is sort of how do we look at these, you know, one of the gentlemen who left, at last meeting said, you know, we should be charging more for turf fields so that we can keep the other fields. So think about that as well. But we're in the interim, we're going to try and get more information. I had asked the school district for their fees, and I don't know if they're on or not, but to get their fees steady, because I think they had collected a lot of data, so we can at least share that with the group and everybody can see what other agencies are charging, and so we can have a more in-depth discussion. Now, the first question, I'll come back in a second. The first question, or the question that I would ask if I were you, is saying council's direction said, what happens at the end of the year and the fees, right? So as it turns out, we do the registration in January, but we don't bill you till May. So we can take the Wade Brummal, get that finished. We could continue to have those conversations. Unfortunately, there's only one meeting in December at council. So we're not going to make the before the end of the fiscal year. So we're targeting January to have this process completed at council. So I just want to have that disclosure with you so that we can continue to have the conversations, get there, and recognize that the fees will not be due to the spring. Everybody understand that? Okay. Good question?
One thing to maybe discuss, or at least provide the information to the group for the next meetings is where, like, I think everyone understands the maintenance and everything goes into it, but where do the fees go? Do they go specifically? Do they go to the general fund or do they go to the Parks Department? I think one of the things in the past has been, if we're paying these fees, we want to see where that money goes. And we know that Parks Department is one of the first to get cut when there is a deficit. So it would for the youth organizations and the sports organizations, it'd be like, to me, it's like the more successful that we are charging fees or we are doing whatever, then that just multiplies itself, right? And the fields look better, or maintenance being done. But if they're going to some general pot that can be taken, then it doesn't help you guys at all with what you're trying to do for us.
So it does, I can answer that one this meeting. It goes to the general fund, and that general fund is then used to pay the park and rec. So that same money gets funneled here, right? And so the $115,000 goes into his $12.3 million. So it does go there, right? So I don't know what else we could be looking at it, but that's where the money goes to. And you're right, we are the easiest one to be cut in tough times, right? Us and libraries. It's the same in every city I've ever worked in. So I don't know what more we could do around that, but I think it is important for you guys to advocate for, and I'll go over the line here, to advocate to maintain an effective department, right? I mean, that's an important value resource, which is why I'm saying, please comment in the Parks Master Plan. We need the community to say these programs are important. Now, I think in a few minutes, I'm going to go talk to a reporter about our infrastructure needs, right? We have significant infrastructure needs. What Parks and Rec does is we build community. I did a presentation to Rotary last week, and I said, who remembers taking swimming lessons at a city pool? Who remembers taking an after-school class? Who remembers going to a city event? We build community. We build the social connections that, quite honestly, during COVID, became tremendously of value. I don't think people really understood the value of Parks and Recs until COVID, and they couldn't go out anybody, and they couldn't see anybody. And Parks and Recs, these folks do this on a daily basis. We are what build community in this community, and everybody loves Santa Clara for the quality of life, for the dedication of staff, for the traditions that we have here. It's Parks and Rec that does that, right? And so the council has to understand, and this community also has to understand the importance of this community and why investments in infrastructure are so important. Because if we don't have the buildings, and as they know very directly, we are going to shut buildings down. The facilities in Santa Clara are as old as I am, and I'm about ready to retire. So just know that there has to be some kind of investment. And it's not that we're crying wolf, and the staff does an amazing job doing what they can. The fact that we were closed 100 days for the aquatics pool in the year was a tribute to them, because the other 265 days, they were there putting in equipment and welding and doing whatever they can to keep it open, right? So, you know, I encourage everybody to vote this November. however you want to vote, but know that we have significant needs. Right?
Yeah, 45 million over the polls for Measure I. How much more in Measure I is for Parks and Rec?
I do.
This-
Does anybody have my phone? Is that one over there?
Yeah, there's 3 other parks.
Yeah.
That's okay, that's okay, I can do that.
I can send it out to the group because I just looked because I have it on my desk that I'm gonna.
No problem.
But I can send it out to the group. But it's going to, and I do want to be really clear. I know that this community is split on the ISC. I get it. But what people need to recognize is not only the competitive programs, but really the lap swim programs, the learn to swim programs. There are other community programs, and we've had really strong conversations with the swim groups that when we rebuild, our intent is to build a community pool that serves multiple purposes, one of which being the competitive pools, but also the general population, the seniors who want to get in the water, the kids who need to learn to swim. Swimming is an important life skill. And so this community needs to have a pool that meets those needs. And we're going to work with the teams to figure out how they go out and raise the money to do the other kinds of add-ons. But we've talked about a design that will really focus initially on a 50-meter, I think it's a 50-meter pool, and a community pool where we can do lessons, because that's what this community needs. It'll meet the needs of the swim team, it'll meet the needs of the larger community, but we have to focus on that first. So please, when you look at it, and I know people are sensitive about the ISC, but think of the ISC as all of those programs. The other money that's in the bond, I can talk about generally. There's money for playgrounds. So we have money that we collect from when developments come on board. We have money for design. We don't have money for construction. So Henry Schmidt, Earl Carmichael, Bowers are all projects that we know need to be done. We've, I think, done an amazing job with the parks that we've just opened, Magical Bridge, Westwood, Maywood. We'd like to be able to continue that. So that's a chunk of the money. And then the other chunk of the money is around infrastructure that we did a facility conditions assessment that says these are the critical and poor condition facilities that are in that condition. You need to address those. So there's a big chunk of money there for that. And then there's a little bit of chunk of money for pickleball. Because we know we don't have any money to address changing the demands for pickleball, for cricket. The trends have changed in recreation, and we have no money to address it. We're the only community that doesn't have that money, right? So that's what the bond, those sort of big pockets.
In the next 3 meetings, can we also talk about how the organizations volunteer their time and do stuff? I know we tried to get something worked out for our softball tournament. Timing was off, I get it. But there's a value there. It's a huge value added to the time that is volunteered by the users.
So I actually had that conversation with Linda, because I think we were already having this conversation about the need for an MOU or a license agreement for the Little League, because they're a little bit different. They're sort of an exclusive user of the field, and having some agreement where there's some contribution value added to that and adjusted. The fire has only made that more critical, right? Is making sure that everybody's clear on the roles and responsibilities. Whose building is it? What rights do they have? For example, it's our building, but they have the keys, right? We need to work that out. The same thing with the aquatics, right? They used to pay some money because they were doing meets. They're not going to be able to do meets when the pool opens. And so we're going to have a fee structure that represents their contribution to the operation, right? And so having those agreements are going to need to be in place. I was at council on Tuesday night talking about that. That's one of our tasks between now and the time that the pool are replastered is developing an MOU so that we're very clear on what their contributions are, what their roles and responsibilities are, and how we're going to give credit to the contributions of the other parties. So
There's a lot of boundaries and there's a lot of handshake deals
oh, absolutely.
that need to get put on paper. I understand all that. There's union boundaries and by all means, I don't want to take somebody's job away. That's not the intent of what we want to volunteer for.
There should be some
It's
recognition.
the little things we want to do that they just don't have time to do. Or the budget to do.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Like our thing was sweeping the sidewalk behind the backstop and underneath the stairs. That's all we wanted to do was blow out under the seats and sweep the sidewalk.
Remember, our very first meeting, our commitment was to meet with the group every January to talk about fees and to talk about this. So again, this has never been intended to be a one and done. It's intended to be an ongoing communication with the groups. That's how we're going to get better at this, right? It's a new process for all of us. We're all kind of working through, and I know it's been frustrating to get the things at the last minute, and I apologize, but we are really shorthanded and doing the best that we can. So please be patient with this. We are trying to get there. And before we leave, I do want to go back to the Wade Brummal. So as I mentioned, we are going to present at the Park and Rec on November 18th. Is there anybody from this group willing to co-present with us?
November 18th? I'll go to that meeting, Parks and Rec meeting. I'll go to it.
I think it's important for them to hear that you guys have been part of the process. It's 7 o'clock.
It's in the cafeteria at the city hall.
Because this is your document, right? We did it based on your comments. It's your document. So I just want the record to show that you guys have participated and we're reflecting your contribution.
What time is the meeting?
7 o'clock in the cafeteria. It's a Zoom meeting. If people can't get there, you can contribute from the phone as well.
Dave, the
Thanks,
18th,
everybody, for coming.
Tuesday night.
I'll be in championship play by that time.
Oh, you moved with the Mondays now, I'm sorry.
Because the Mondays.
I did 8 years on Tuesday night, I'm sorry.
Because they remember the conflict meeting?
Yeah.
How that gets rid of that, so they.
Yeah, because there was like 4 meetings.
Yeah.
There were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now.
Getting something done today, I really appreciate it.
Good.